Good morning. Welcome to the webinar. Officially, let's get started. I want to start with some introductions for myself and thank you for coming to the webinar today. I think we had a lot of registrants for today. So obviously this is a topic that is on people's minds. I am very excited to be presenting on this topic actually. Well, not actually, but I am very excited to be presenting on this topic because it's something that is just so current. It's so in the moment right now. And it's something that, I don't know, I'm pretty excited about. Like, I like to be able to speak to this because I think there's just such an so much interesting going on right now, right? About what we do for people working from home. All of the past few months has been quite interesting. So I'll get into that in a bit more detail, but let's start first with introducing myself. Thank you for coming. My name is Sarah Snabel. I am one of the co-owners of Pro Ergonomics. I'm a registered kinesiologist. I'm a certified professional ergonomist. And today I'm going to talk you through this webinar on equipment recommendations. So this is sort of outlining some of our top picks when it comes to working from home, but kind of with a spin on focusing on what might be different. So you were doing office ergonomics when everybody was working in offices, right? In your corporate offices. People are now working from home. Is it the same? Not really. Is it different? Also not really, but it kind of is because it's uncharted territory. So working from home, we don't have the same level of, the same level of control, the same level of visibility. We don't know really what our employees are working from. We also haven't necessarily known how long we were going to be working from home for. So I think that there's maybe been some delays in terms of what we launch, right? What corporations are launching or what they're doing, kind of doing a little bit of the sit and wait and see. So that's why I thought this webinar was a very timely topic, because we still don't really know when we're all going back, but there is a lot more people going back to work. It just seems to be that the office workers are the ones that are going to be last, or one of the latter few that are going back, right? Due to it's a lot of logistical issues too, right? Often you cram a whole lot of office workers in one building, and it's not even so much the fact that you can physical distance between cubicles, right? Which we can do. It's more so for some of those big corporations, especially getting people in and out of the building, right? Just regular in the morning, but also in the case of an emergency. So for a lot of bigger corporations, especially these corporate office environments, the work from home is happening for a lot longer. So I want to kind of give a little recap, really. So COVID sent us all home sort of unexpectedly, right? Maybe unexpectedly, maybe expectedly for some, right? Bone of contention for argument. But mostly it was very suddenly. And most employees went home, probably with a laptop only, and sort of under this idea that it was this quote unquote 3 weeks, right? Schools were closed for 3 weeks, so it's just going to be 3 weeks, and we're all going to go back. And we all know that it's evolved to be a lot longer than 3 weeks. So at Pro Ergonomics, we've actually been watching this evolve like with a very curious eye, because it was something that we saw right from the get-go. Working from home for 3 weeks on a laptop, you know what? Not the end of the world. For some people, they're going to feel the burn right away, especially some of your employees who maybe already had some accommodation needs prior to working from home. Somebody who had a previous ergonomic assessment or had a previous injury, working on a laptop for even 1 day is enough to spark some of that discomfort. But for, the average healthy individual, 3 weeks on a laptop probably isn't enough to cause an injury. Definitely they'll feel a little bit of discomfort, but not necessarily cause an injury. But what we know is that working on a laptop is not good. It is not good at all from an ergonomic perspective, right? And I always rely back to the CSA office standard, right? Working on a laptop does not allow you to achieve an ergonomic setup at all. It's impossible to achieve an ergonomic setup when you work on a laptop. Now, that's with no extra accessories plugged in. So just working on a laptop as is, it's not great on your body, right? The keyboard and mouse, are like the keyboard's usually small, right? It's and the mouse. Who likes the touchpad mouse? Come on now. No, I'm joking. I actually don't mind the touchpad mouse, but for a lot of people, that's a source of frustration. Which you can carry that tension in your muscles when you're frustrated. And for some people, the location just being in the center can cause some inward shoulder rotation, right? There's some postural things that are going on there. The biggest thing really with the laptop is that your keyboard and your monitor are attached. Right? So you can get your elbows at 90 degrees and get your keyboard and mouse in line with your elbow height, right? Which is what we want. That's our reference posture from the CSA standard. But as much as we achieve that, the monitor is far too low, right? Remember, the goal is that we want neutral postures. So looking straight ahead at the monitor is not possible. You could then raise your laptop up, but you'll be typing, at your shoulder height, kind of in a ridiculous posture. So we see this on the daily. Like, this is something very regularly that, you go in and do an assessment and somebody is complaining about neck or upper back or shoulder pain, and you go in there and it turns out that they're working on a laptop, right? And for some of you listening, I know maybe you think that's kind of crazy. Like, who's working on a laptop only these days? But it happens, and it happens more so because laptops they're portable. And so people are taking them to meetings, they take them home, they work from home a little bit more, they work on them longer. So we're always trying to get people away from working on a laptop. Okay, but then enter COVID, everybody goes home with a laptop, and that's about it. So not that we're necessarily predicting the future, but we know that, laptops are hard on the body. And kind of my running joke really is that if you're ever looking for a career change, you're probably going to want to source something like massage therapy, physiotherapy, chiropractic for all these people who've been working from home and are developing quite the mess of knots in their muscles. So yeah, those professions will definitely, those health professionals will have their work cut out for them as people start, rebooking their appointments. Okay, so now we know that working from home is happening longer. And actually, this was, way back in April. I think I saw this post on social media, and I don't actually remember the source. So I can't say that I can't take credit for this. But I did mention it in a previous webinar as well that I did on purchasing standards. Once we're no longer required to work from home, will we go back to traditional offices? And that was a question that, somebody had posed. And it was a really interesting thought back at the beginning of COVID, right? April would have only been 3 weeks into COVID. What's going to happen? And, the predictions were for some organizations is that employees are actually, they're working from home okay. As much as we thought we could never send our employees home, they're actually doing okay. It's not as unproductive or inefficient as we thought it might be, or, and so we're seeing that because now it's been, April, May, June, July, 4 months. It's now been 4 months of people working from home. And there are a lot of organizations, and I hear this from clients, I hear this from friends, I hear this from family. There are a lot of people who are contemplating whether they'll go back to the office at all because it's working. What they're doing is working. And then, whether they do go back or not, there's talk that maybe it's September, when kids go back to school, we'll all go back to the office, or some organizations, and that's maybe a bit hopeful. Some organizations, some clients have told me that, they're kind of aiming for an October, November, but they're just kind of waiting and seeing. And I've had other people tell me that don't expect to be back in the office until January. Okay, so January is like 9 or 10 months. That'll be almost a full year that people will have been working from home. So this is what concerns me, us as certified ergonomists. This concerns us, is that working on a laptop from home for that length of time is scary, to say the least. Right? So health and safety of your employees, right? And this is kind of where the scary comes in. But the health and safety of your employees, including the ergonomics piece, does not end because they are at home. And I kind of want to pause and just make sure that that people are understanding that, right? You would have been putting into place ergonomics in your workplace when they were in-house, right? Hopefully, hopefully you were. Most clients that we work with have some sort of office ergonomics program, right? Some are more extravagant than others, but most people are at least addressing the basic needs of office ergonomics in the office, including, chair, making sure that people have the same desk, all of that. But working from home is sort of an interesting scenario because you can even just think about your own situation. Think about the company that you're working for. Again, think about it as you, the employee, and think about it as you kind of coming from the employer side, because I know that a lot of you logged in are kind of the health and safety professional side of things. So that's what you want to think about from that perspective is, what have you been provided? What are you providing? What have you been thinking about, right? You're responsible, right? If we go to that kind of general duty health and safety clause, that you're responsible for providing a safe work environment. You're responsible for providing the right tools for the job, the right equipment for the job. So if you are one of those organizations that still has only a laptop provided to your employees, I'll tell you that that's really not cutting it, right? Just a laptop alone is not going to cut it. Ignoring the hazards is not okay, right? We know it is documented in the CSA office standard. Plus, you can talk to just about any health professional that will agree that working on a laptop alone is not great for your posture. It's a huge MSD hazard, right? So ignoring those hazards is not okay. Doing nothing is not okay, right? A lot of companies have been kind of doing the sit and wait and see. Oh, we're going back soon. Oh, we're going back soon. I'm not sure what to do. And I understand there's a bit of a financial crunch and some uncertainties in there, but doing nothing is not okay. Continuing to wait is not okay. And I'm saying that in the sense that I'm talking to those that really have only sent home the laptop. In terms of a basic kit, right? I'll talk about the equipment in a second. I just want to show this slide up here, right? So it's just a recipe for disaster is really what's happening here, right? Ignoring the hazards. People are at home working on laptops, and you don't know what their environment looks like. And that's okay. Maybe you don't necessarily need to know the details, except that ignoring the fact that that you've only sent people home with a laptop is really the part that's not okay. When we talk about what can cause or what can lead to injuries, the physical setup for sure is a contributing factor. And then we've got some stress, right? Just in general, stress, uncertainties. Everybody is dealing with working from home in a different perspective. Some people love it. Some people hate it. Some people are super stressed out because they've been working from home and also homeschooling their kids. And you think it's going to get better because now it's summertime, but guess what? There's a lot of camps that aren't open, or it's hard to get into camps. So parents are also working from home and trying to entertain their children. So when we have stress, we tend to carry that in our muscles, right? The soft tissue. So you get a not so great physical setup, you get stress, and that's exactly the contributing factors that can mix together and cause an injury. Starts out as discomfort, but can lead to those musculoskeletal issues, injuries, right? So you need a game plan. This is what I am suggesting. We are suggesting pro ergonomics. You need a game plan. Really, you need an ergonomics game plan here, because a lot of working from home is ergonomics. I'm sure you've got lots of other things on your plate, but for those of you who are tuning in, your health and safety professionals, this is where you want to put on your ergonomics goggles, because some of the health and safety hazards of working from home are, some of the big ones are related to ergonomics. So what are you going to do? What are you going to do for your staff? What are you going to provide for them? They're working from home, whether they're working from home for a continued, extended period of time, or maybe you're talking about working from home permanently. Possibly you're not really sure, right? Again, some of you listening in may not necessarily know. You may not necessarily have those answers, but again, this is where you need to take action, right? Sort of assuming that, well, we're not going back tomorrow, we're not going back next week, so what are we going to do in the meantime? Ergonomics game plan. So something, again, I want to talk about the equipment. I am not going to harp on or go into detail on a remote work policy. However, I do want to highlight it because I think it is key. I really do think that it's key. There are some places that maybe already had people working from home before COVID started, and they already had some sort of remote work policy in place. And the policy will take on different forms, kind of depending on the size of your organization or the type of work that they're doing, or possibly you have a remote work policy sort of embedded into another policy. But I do know that there are a lot of places who had people working from home in the past, but didn't necessarily have a remote work policy, or people who, maybe you worked from home on occasion, like a snow day or a sick day or whichever, and so a remote work policy might not have been as critical. Okay, but it is a good idea to have one, and just kind of a few key elements that I would highlight, that you'd want to include in there, right? A policy is a good idea. Just you write it down, right? It's your commitment. It's your corporate commitment to what you're going to provide to employees. It very clearly outlines it. It's the same kind of reason why we have policies for everything else. But you want to think about all of the different angles, right? And things like who's it going to apply to, right? Which employees are working from home? So thinking about the tasks that they do, and you might have some elements that are also branching into your privacy policy and data, those kinds of things, right? But expectations, like expectations of hours, availability, those kinds of things, those are, whether it goes in the policy or those are things that are regularly communicated to employees, it's important, right? Are you expected to be available at any time between the hours of 8 and 4, or because we're working from home, we are accepting more flex hours, and that kind of ties into the accountability and supervision component as well, right? How are you holding employees accountable to that? How are you tracking it, just to make sure that workloads are balanced? And then the ergonomics, and that some of that is the psychosocial factors of ergonomics as well, but the physical side of ergonomics is also talking about the equipment piece, right? The equipment, the training. So how do you set up a home office, as well as what are you going to do if somebody needs extra help, right? So you give them some training, you give them some equipment, but they still need some extra help because they're struggling. Maybe they have some actual discomfort or a doctor's note or whatever it is. So your policy kind of should cover all of those elements. In terms of equipment, this is what will be different, I think, from a lot of different organizations. And I've actually really enjoyed conversations, talking to people about this, talking with clients, talking with friends, talking with families, just to learn about what other companies are doing. Like, are we giving people a budget for home offices? Okay, so you're going to be working from home indefinitely for the next, indefinitely, right? You're going to be working from home for the next few weeks or months. We're not sure when you're coming back. So we're going to give each employee X amount of dollars to buy the equipment that they need for their office. Okay, so that is something that I know some employers are doing. Will you have the ability to sign stuff out from work? Right? I know that some companies are doing that. Some were allowed to go back into their office right at the start of COVID and grab their keyboard, their mouse, their monitor, right? Kind of sign it out as per like an asset management program. And some places have been, kind of going back to the budget, some corporations have been buying certain equipment and having it shipped directly to the employee. So there's a couple of different ways that I've seen it, a couple of different ways that you could make it feasible within your office, but something that you'd want to consider in that policy, because that's the step that we need to take action on right now, right? Is what are we going to do? Well, we need to make sure that people are outfitted with the right equipment. And what equipment are we going to do? I did talk about a purchasing standard, like developing a purchasing standard for home offices or for remote offices in a previous webinar. So I don't want to go into a ton of detail on that, because you can always watch that webinar again on our YouTube channel. But this is sort of a branch of that, right? So a purchasing standard would help you to standardize the equipment, right? So if you did give employees a budget, or you give supervisors a budget for them to purchase stuff for the employees, or they're approving things, a purchasing standard just helps to make sure that it's kind of a quick and easy list, right? It's almost like pre-approved equipment. So if somebody needs a chair, here are 2 or 3 chairs that the company has already pre-approved. They meet the ergonomic criteria. They meet our budget requirements, or they're part of our vendor program, so we get really good pricing here. So it's a couple of chairs that are already picked, and that could be for all equipment too, right? You have a monitor, a keyboard, a webcam, I don't know, all of the different things that could be a possible equipment that your employees might need. Right? But really, it doesn't have to be formal. It doesn't have to be like a full-on standard or a policy, but mostly it's just you want to make sure that people are actually getting the right equipment, right? It avoids people just buying, oh, I need a laptop riser. Okay, I'll just buy this one, right? Because it's $20 and I only have a budget of $200. I don't want to spend all my money in one spot, right? But we don't necessarily want people to buy the cheapest item. We want them to buy the right item that fits them, something that actually helps them with their posture. So having it could be a purchasing standard. It could even be like a product list, right? Like a pre-approved product list. I think it's really handy. Just going back to this remote work policy in terms of how people are, sorry, I want to go to this slide here, sorry. In talking about remote work policy and kind of this interesting conversations that I've been enjoying anyways. I'm trying to learn as much as possible what different organizations are doing. You know, we talk to some of our clients and they say, oh, we're not having people sign stuff out from work. So far that hasn't been allowed, right? But that's also changing. Those companies who said, sorry, staff aren't allowed to come in, because part of that was the physical distancing or the social distancing back in, March and April. They just didn't want people re-entering the building. And now they're reevaluating that. So allowing people to go in and pick up their equipment. I read an interesting article just yesterday actually. I think it was in the news, so some of you may have read it as well, just talking about budgets that federal employees are getting, right? And I don't know the details on it because, again, I'm just reading a news article as opposed to, going to the direct source and confirming all of the dollar amounts. But this article suggested that, federal employees might get up to $500 to put towards a home office, or they can get a new chair, right? So they can use that to get a chair, or they can use it to buy equipment that they need for their home office, which I think is really interesting. And I did talk to someone that I do know who works in that environment in the federal, and she's told me that she's able to go into her office and pick up whatever equipment she needs, right? So she was able to actually take her chair from home. She was able to take her footrest and her keyboard and her mouse. So she has essentially replicated her office workstation at home with the exception of the desk. So she did have a sit-to-stand desk at work, and that wasn't something that she was able to bring home. And so that's the thing that she might want to be using her budget dollars for. But now messaging me as a friend saying, hey, what do I buy with my money? Which again is another reason why I thought this webinar was a perfect topic, because we're getting a lot of questions like that. So you might already have an equipment list, and you might already have equipment that you're letting people take out from the office, right? People can come in, they can take their chair, they can take their keyboard, they can take their mouse. I don't know that I've heard of anybody taking their actual desk. And you can let me know if maybe that's happening in your organization. That's quite a big furniture move. So it's just not something that I've heard or seen yet. I've heard of people taking their monitors, their monitor arms, their printers, basically all of that kind of peripheral equipment. But the thing with an in-house office is that when you are buying equipment, it's very controlled, right? In the sense that it's almost like a cookie cutter. So you can set up a cubicle of offices and everybody will get the same desk. Everybody will get the same monitor. We buy in mass volumes. Everybody's getting the same chair, or maybe we have two different chairs, that we are kind of distributing throughout the office. Everybody gets, 2-drawer filing cabinet. Everybody gets the same keyboard. And then really it's only when somebody has a specific ergonomic assessment or a need, and they might get something specific to accommodate them, right? But that's what we're seeing in-house. And it's because the environment is the same. Everybody comes to the office and you provide it. The challenge with working from home is that it varies a lot, like a lot. This is, again, another one of the interesting conversations that I'm having with people is, what does your home office look like? And for me and for our team, like the Pro Ergonomics team, you may or may not know, but we all work from home. We don't have a main office with, that kind of overhead main office. We all work from home, and we've always worked from home. And even prior to starting pro ergonomics, I worked from home a lot. So for the better part of 12 years, I worked from home. So I have a dedicated home office. But I know that, and it's important. When we moved into this house, made sure that we had an office. I'm always making sure that I have a space for my office because I work from home a lot, so that space is important. However, a lot of us got sent home from work in March, and maybe had never worked from home before. So having a home office space wasn't something on their radar when they were purchasing the house or remodeling, or and the reality is that some people don't have space to make an office. I know we're talking like varying a lot in the sense that we don't know if everybody's even working in an office. Some people could be working in their kitchen. Some people are working on their couch, their counter. Some people have done some homemade modifications, using tote bins and ironing boards and craft tables. Like, we've heard a whole variety of things. But the reality really is that everything that works in the office isn't necessarily going to work at home. Sure, you can say, oh, okay, I'll send, maybe you were saying like, oh, I'll send the employee home with a chair. And for some people, they're maybe saying, oh, I don't really have room for that chair. And maybe that's what they were saying at the beginning, because I think now, after maybe saying I didn't have room for the chair and sitting on a dining room chair for 4 months, that maybe they are going to be making room for that office chair. And I use that as an example only because it is a comment that I did hear. Right. But at home, it varies so much. We can be talking about employees working from home in a 2,800 foot square house, and it's no problem for them to find an extra space. We could also have employees who are working from home in a 500 square foot apartment with their spouse, who are both working from home right now. So setting up a separate office space just isn't even physically possible. So even if you could send somebody home with a desk, or even if you could, or you were going to buy them a desk, where are they going to put it? Right. So this is where some of the differences come in between an in-house environment versus the home office. Right. There's lots of things. You can still get the same laptop, the same keyboard, the same mouse, the same potentially the same monitors as well. But again, it kind of comes down to what everybody has at home. It's not really as easy as just saying, oh, let's just buy what we had at work. And actually, this is kind of a reason why we've had this webinar going on since the start of COVID. We developed it kind of quickly when we realized that this is definitely not a 3-week work from home situation. We know that working on a laptop alone is not great. And so our at-home ergonomics webinar, we give a lot of practical tips on how you can make homemade solutions to better set up your environment, right? So how can you better set up your work from home environment if you only have a laptop? And what we suggest very, very strongly is that at minimum, you have a keyboard and mouse. You plug that into your laptop, it's going to give you a ton more freedom. But that being said, this is really just a good starting point. Right? We can't necessarily work from home forever on a dining room chair, right? That's going to get old real fast. I can definitely, I'm definitely comfortable in saying that I can give you some modifications that, we can add cushions to your chair. We can add, you can set up on an ironing board, and I'm totally comfortable and I support that as a temporary solution. But it kind of comes back to, I had a slide. Hang on. I thought I had a slide. This slide right here. At what point are homemade solutions compromising safety? Right? So again, it's fine for temporary, but how long will it last? So that's kind of the interesting question. This webinar, it's great. I totally support it. But I do think that if we are looking at for a long term, we need to really seriously look at the equipment that our employees have, look at their setup, and make sure that we're providing them with the right education. So when it comes down to it, the number one thing. The number one thing I think for your base kit is your keyboard and mouse, right? But that's almost not really part of the budget, right? I think that you could easily get that. A lot of people already have that at home. A lot of people are already taking that from work, right? You can sign them out. That's a pretty minimal cost. And so as a base, like that's probably my number one, but I'm assuming that you've already done that. And so in terms of what's next, what are we going to do now to make it a more permanent solution? What can we do to make your home office better? The very first thing I think that you should be spending your money on and really considering for your employees is the chair. Absolutely the chair. When I go and do office assessments, like in-house, the chair is the first thing that I start with. And you will, if I've ever done an assessment for you, you'll probably remember that I've said the chair is the most important part. If I can get you comfortable in the chair, I'm confident that I can make adjustments to everything else because it's just stuff, right? I can move the monitor and I can move the keyboard and the mouse and I can add, this or that to bring it to you. But if you're not comfortable in the chair, you're not going to notice all of those other adjustments, right? Because you're going to be so focused on the fact that your butt is numb or you're slipping out of the chair or something's digging into you. So the same goes for working from home. The chair is the most important piece. Now, you may want to consider having employees be able to sign their chair out, right? Take their chair from their office. That's a huge cost savings. I don't know necessarily the specific logistical challenges that presents, but it is possible that that would be a cost savings. Or you can also look at purchasing chairs, right? Purchasing chairs, or if it's that you've given a budget to employees, I'll just be realistic, a chair, getting a chair for like $200 probably, that's probably on the low end. I know Ergocentric, oh, sorry, that picture is very blurry. Shoot. But Ergocentric has a decent program right now, actually, and I say that, but you know what? I think I remember the program might have ended June 30th, so I'd have to double check on that. But they did have a work from home program where they had a great chair. I think it was just shy of $500 that would ship out relatively quickly. That's a good example. That's a high-end chair, and to get that chair for $500 is a great deal. And I'm talking Ergocentric, but there's lots of companies that have decent chairs. I would just be careful with creating a budget and expecting people to be able to buy multiple pieces of equipment, because I do think that the chair is a little bit of a more expensive piece. So you want something that has height adjustability, you want it to have lumbar support, and you want it to be able to fit them, right? That is ergonomics, fitting the work to the worker. And you can reference the CSA office standard as well. The chair, it will give you certain specs for the chair, and how, what measurements a chair should have in order to fit the widest range of users. But ultimately, when it comes down to, what is the ideal chair, the chair should fit the user. So, it doesn't have to be the same chair for everybody. That's just probably an easiest way to do it, right? You standardize for consistency so that somebody needs a chair, boom, we're going to get you this chair because we've already got it set up in our vendor system. We get the best pricing. We already have delivery arrangements made. It comes pre-assembled, other things to consider, right? So the chair is absolutely the number one thing that I think. And to be honest, investing in your seating is going to go a long way. Oh, there, I cleared my picture up. My picture's not blurry there, right? But investing in seating will go a long way. And actually, this is something that is the same between remote work and in-house office. I believe that investing in your seating will go a long way. If you cheap out on the chair, it's just, I don't know, it's not really a good message. People will feel it. You'll feel it. Think about the chair that you're sitting in right now. Think about how it feels when you get a really good chair, and it adjusts and you get it set just for you and it feels so good. So, as much as it helps from this ergonomic, postural standpoint, it's also really good for that kind of employee engagement, the appreciation side of things as well. Okay, so that's the main thing. So first, I'm assuming that you already had a base kit of laptop, keyboard, mouse. Then you're going to want to look at chair. The next thing is the desk or the work surface. And I kind of hesitated even, like I went back and forth several times about whether or not I listed this as a number 2 or whether I listed it at all, because I kind of was flip-flopping back and forth because you can see it even in my top question there is it absolutely necessary? So I don't think that you necessarily need to go out and buy a desk or a work surface for all of your employees, but I think that it's an element that you can't overlook. You have to ask about it. You have to find out what people have available, right? So you can get a chair, and then we need to find out what their surface is. It's okay if it's a dining room table. It just might change some of the other equipment that we that we might implement. You know, what space do they have available? If you are going to buy, you know, everybody a height adjustable desk, do they even have room for that? So making sure that the desk is going to be appropriate for the space the employee has available, is appropriate for their tasks. Those kinds of things are just very, very worthwhile to consider. So yeah, I don't think that you need to necessarily go out and buy it, but I do think that it's interesting. And this is actually where I've made a couple of recommendations, or it's been a couple of really interesting, make you think type of questions. So, you know, somebody comes to me and says, well, I had one of those Ergotron sit stand units at my desk before I went home. Okay, so Ergotron sit stand is like that picture on the far left, right above the word desk. So it's one that mounts to your desk, right? It's kind of nice because it may, you know, the advertising about it is that it makes it portable. So it just sits on top of your desk. However, when we go from home, when we work from home, who's going to install that? Right? And that might be different a little bit now because things are opening up a bit, but this was a really big deal in March and April. You know, so employee comes to me and says, you know, I'm doing a virtual assessment with them, and they say, well, this is what I had. And I said, okay, well, my first thought was like, well, let's just get you one of those for home. See if you can bring that home. And she says, well, I can't install it myself. I don't have somebody who can install that. That's too heavy for me to lift. Great, excellent point. And because that was early on, wasn't also a time where we can just send somebody in to install it. They thought maybe they could do that, but then the company, her employer, started thinking, well, we don't even really want to install that because we don't know what desk you have. So how can we ensure the integrity of the desk you have will withhold the weight of that unit, right? So they chose to just buy her a height adjustable desk. They were looking at a couple of different options. To be honest, I think they went with an IKEA height adjustable desk for that. And so she was somebody she was one of those higher need employees, right? So somebody who had had an ergonomic assessment, who had had a previous injury, and so they were doing what they needed to accommodate her quite early on. But just a couple of things to consider is that this is where not all of the same equipment that you had at work is going to work at home. Same, think about all of the workstations in your office that maybe had keyboard trays, right? So the desk, your standard desk at work, is typically about 28 or 29 inches. And that might be not much different actually for people who are working from home. You know, again, if they have a desk or if they're working from a dining room table, the heights are going to be very similar. For a lot of people, that's too high. We're trying to get the keyboard and mouse to elbow height. So what I would suggest first is try to raise your chair up, right? Raise your chair up so that you can get your elbows in line with the desk. Give yourself a footrest in case your feet are dangling. However, for people who are working from home right now, especially if they don't have a height adjustable chair yet, that's not really possible, right? So, but you're not going to go and mount a keyboard tray on their dining room table, right? That's just not appropriate. So we need to look for other solutions. Same, who's going to install the keyboard tray, right? Similar to the sit stand add-on unit. So just a couple of things to consider where it's not exactly, oh, we'll just do what we did in the office. We'll just do that at home. There are a couple of questions to ask. There are some great height adjustable desks out there. I know I've got a couple of pictures up here. I mentioned the IKEA one. That one's a great price point. It's not typically one that I think a lot of corporations buy, like for in-house. They typically tend to go to more industrial strength ones, but for a home office, I would be totally comfortable recommending that. And possible if somebody doesn't have all of the space and you're looking for, you know, where can they set up a computer workstation, this might be the time that you're looking for more those mobile carts. You know, and maybe it wasn't something that you considered in your office but for some industrial environments, they would have workstations on wheels, or you see them in hospitals too, workstations on wheels. But for people who are working from home, who really don't have a lot of space, but need like a dedicated spot, or they need to be able to move, considering a mobile cart is an interesting option. I've seen a few. I'm still trying to look for some more. I'm trying to look for more products on that. So, I mean, if you have any interesting mobile cart, so the picture in the middle there, the second one over, that's a mobile cart. And I think it's actually marketed towards like the education sector from Ergotron. And I like it. I like that one a lot, actually, but I'm looking for others. I don't know a lot about these products. So if any of you who are listening who happen to know that, I'm looking to learn some more about mobile carts, because I think that there's some interesting applications for people who have limited space. Okay. Oh, I also want to mention, if you are purchasing anything that is height adjustable for at home, right? Because height adjustable at home is sort of an interesting idea. In the office, in the cubicle environment, sometimes getting those sit-stand desks is tricky because it can create, well, one, sometimes there's physical challenges, like how do you put a sit-stand desk into a cubicle with partition walls, right? We have some stability and some structural challenges there, but also it can create a I want what they have type of environment. So, some people don't want to do that because if that person gets it, they'll have to do it for everybody. They don't have the budget for that. And I realize that that can still happen at home. But again, if you are kind of giving a budget, depending on how you are kind of giving people the freedom to use that money, make sure you check the specs. And this comes to height adjustability specifically. So look for the height range. Height adjustable desks are not created equal. And I can't stress this enough because I've even seen it happen in a giant corporate office. This happened for like 3,000 employees. They outfitted each desk, each workstation with a height adjustable desk, but the lowest height is 28 inches, which is a standard desk height, right? They didn't give them keyboard trays. For a lot of people, 28 inches is too high. They're going to have to raise their chair. So in that, like personally in that example, and I'm not going to name names, but in that was a big design miss, right? 3,000 employees who now, so now you have to go back and, and it's not within your budget to go back and add keyboard trays or chairs with taller gas lifts, because that was the other problem. There was a lot of people, like kind of the 5 foot to 5'2" people, that kind of height range, where they tried to raise their chair to the max and it still wasn't high enough for them, right? So now either retrofitting chairs with taller gas lifts or adding keyboard trays, it was an extra expense. At home though, that's just something to make sure that you're considering as well, because you might be buying more one-off. So for example, Costco makes a great height adjustable desk, but what you'll notice, and it's a great price point, but what you'll notice is that I think the lowest that it goes to is 29 inches. So great if you're standing, because that will accommodate a lot of people, and great if you're tall when you're sitting, but not so great for example, I'm 5'4", a 29-inch desk is far too high for me. I would have to really jack my chair up to get to elbow height. So again, not necessarily throwing the Costco desk under the bus, but it's just a good example, right? That's one that's readily accessible. They often have delivery included right to your house. But look for one that can go lower than that. A good height adjustability range is something that goes as low as 23 inches, right? So usually they go 28 or 29 inches, and then the next range that you see is 23 inches. And there's not probably a lot of people that need it to go to 23 inches, but kind of interesting because you could share it with your kids. If you do need your workstation to be multifunctional, 23 inches is going to allow you to have that workstation shared amongst multiple people. And for people like me, again, I'm 5'4", but I have my desk set. It's not height adjustable with an electric button, but I have my desk set. It's only 26 inches high. So that's something that I just suggest. So I know the IKEA desk range goes that range, 23 to 49 inches. So it's great for sitting and for standing, as well as, who makes another one? Oh, Ergocentric makes one. Their Upcentric desk goes that full range. And I'm sure there's plenty of others. Those are just two off the top of my head that I know of. The third thing that you should consider is your monitor. And there's a couple of different routes that you can go here. So with your monitor, again, depending on space, you might want to plug in an external monitor. That would be good. Laptops are small. But if you just want something that's kind of portable, a laptop riser is a great thing. It's a great travel tool. In the past, I was primarily recommending them for travel. If you go to a lot of meetings or you're working from home on occasion, or you do a lot of, traveling. So you're in a hotel or whatnot. A laptop riser is great because it kind of folds up, right? And here's a pictured one, is the Contour Design laptop riser. And I have to thank Joel Young over at Fitz Body, who reached out to us and said that he'd like to give away one of these in our webinar today. So I should mention that all of you, thank you for attending. Just by attending, I'll put you in a draw, and I'll do the draw at random after the webinar for one of these for free. So amazing, right? What a nice giveaway. We don't often do giveaways, but what a nice offer. So and Contour Design's a great brand. They make some great products. So this is a nice way that you can set your workstation up. And it's something that I talk a lot about when working from home, is that, as much as it might be nice, well, I talk about it working from home during COVID time, as much as it might be nice to be working in a dedicated office, the reality is that we wear a lot of hats right now. Working from home, even for me, I work from home regularly, but guess what? Right now, like my kids are home, my husband's home. So working in my office all day, every day isn't really possible. Sometimes I need to be on the go, right? Sometimes I do need to set up at my dining room or my living room, right? Because it's, I'm going to watch the kids or whatever demand is calling of me. And a laptop riser is kind of great for that. It allows you to bring your laptop to wherever, set it up on the dining room table. Maybe you had a good setup, with a big monitor and a monitor arm or something in your office, but because you need to be portable, this laptop arm is going to allow you to do that. And it's lightweight, so it folds right up. So, even when you're not working from home, you will now have it for travel. It's in a laptop bag. So that might be one thing to consider. And then similarly, this is kind of like asking about the space, is that you might want to have people bring their monitors from home. Sorry, not from home, sorry, from work, right? If they can sign their monitors out at work and bring those home, that's great. The laptop is tricky, right? It's again, fine for short-term or for temporary use. But for those of us who, for anybody who uses spreadsheets, for example, the laptop is sort of, it's hard, isn't it? When you're trying to look at a spreadsheet and you're trying to zoom in to make the font bigger so that you're not craning your neck into the screen, but then you don't see as much data. So a laptop can be hard. It's hard for design stuff. It's hard. Sometimes it can be hard, right? Depending on what it is that you're working on. So plugging in an external monitor can be a good idea. It might be easier for viewing, less strain on your eyes, less strain on your body if you do find that you're leaning in to see it. I would make sure that you are kind of covering off that education on dual monitor setup. So remembering your primary monitor screen should be right in front of you. And then ideally, you have your laptop closed and you're just using it like a hard drive, because if you are using two screens, the ideal is that you are setting them up at the same height and that they're the same size and the same resolution. And that's to help minimize eye strain. But it's okay if you've got to use the laptop as a secondary screen for referencing, maybe, for a small percentage. Again, just make sure that it's positioned off to the left or the right side and that your big screen is directly in front of you, right? So we get neutral neck postures as much as possible. Obviously, a big monitor is not as portable though, so that's kind of where I like the idea of the laptop riser. And it just kind of depends on whether or not, like I know even I have a home office, but like other people that I've talked to, they have a dedicated home office, but they're sharing it, right? If you're sharing it with your spouse, so a couple of days of the week you get your home office, and then a couple of days of the week you're kind of kicked out to the basement or the living room or wherever. So something like a laptop riser kind of creates that opportunity for you to set up a portable workstation. And then I struggled to just pick one accessory that I thought would be the biggest recommendation, because I think with all of the virtual assessments that we've been doing and even just assessments in the past, I feel like I've kind of recommended something a little different each time. Sometimes I've recommended that somebody needs a footrest because to work on the desk that they have, they need a proper footrest. They've been using a box and that's fine, but a tilting footrest would really be, the completion to their home office. For some people, I've recommended a headset. That's pretty far and few and far between though, because I do find that a lot of people already maybe had headsets, or that's maybe one of the first things that people were given, just because we're doing so many more phone calls and video meetings. I did an interesting assessment where I recommended a webcam, and I can honestly say that I have never recommended a webcam before COVID. It just hasn't been part of an ergonomic assessment need, but it was in particular for this individual who had neck and back issues, does a lot of meetings. She has a big screen, so she was able to bring her monitor from work. But the tricky part with that is that she does a lot of meetings. She estimated that about 60 to 70% of her day was meetings, and her webcam is on her laptop. So she's constantly or forever kind of bending in to look at her small laptop screen and to make sure that her face is viewing the webcam. Otherwise, she's looking at her big screen, and for those of you who are seeing her on the webcam, are seeing her as if she's not even looking at them, right? She's looking away as if she's distracted, when really she's looking at her notes, right? She's looking at her notes on the big screen because it's easier to see. So that was actually a really interesting assessment, and it got me thinking a little bit more about the webcams and how people are using their screen during meetings. Possibly phone tripods or something like that too. It's easy enough to set your phone up on something, but just little things like that to consider. right? That there might be some other accessories that you want to consider in terms of what you're going to spend your budget dollars on, or what you're going to buy for employees as a kit. So timing wise, let's do a little recap. And I can see that some questions have come in. Sorry, I haven't been ignoring them. I can see that the questions are popping up, but obviously while I'm talking and reading, I can't do both at once. So I will address all the questions. I'll read through them all at the end and make sure that we have that question time. So as a recap, the main things here is that we know that working on a laptop is not good for the body, right? It's impossible to achieve a proper ergonomic setup when working on a laptop. And so as the health and safety professional, as the ergonomist, as the employer, whatever your role is, you can't ignore the hazards, right? Ignoring the hazards or doing nothing about it is not cool, right? It's not okay. So you need to come up with a game plan. I do suggest looking for a remote work policy. Maybe not looking for, but starting to develop one. You may not necessarily need to reinvent the wheel. It's possible that you use your resources and network and your internet searching and kind of get started on that. But I would suggest that having something documented that especially considers equipment that you are going to either deploy or make available or purchase for your employees. And just again, so that it's standardized and fair amongst everybody. And then highlighting my top equipment choices. So again, I am assuming and really, really hoping that as a base that employees have gone home with a laptop, keyboard, and mouse as that bare minimum. And then on top of that, if you are looking for what you're going to invest in, I can't stress enough the chair. And then possibly you're going to consider the work surface, right? Not necessarily that we're going to need to buy everybody a desk, but again, just making sure that any equipment that we do buy is going to be compatible and work with their work surface that they have available in their space. And then the monitor. So whether it be a laptop riser, whether it be an external monitor, either one would be suitable, but it is sort of kind of going and figuring out what's going to work for each employee. And then accessories, right? And again, those are kind of task dependent, corporate dependent, right? In terms of what you've already been given and versus what people still may need, right? So if you have any questions, please let me know. I would love to hear them. If you have any interesting side tips, some interesting anything like that. Don't forget about the giveaway. I haven't forgotten about the giveaway. I will be doing that draw. I will make sure to do that right after for all of you who have attended. I also have recorded this webinar, so I will be posting it to our website. You can go on our website, you can go to webinars, and it'll show the upcoming ones. And then if you go to the bottom, it actually shows view past events. And you can see a list of all of our previous webinars. And for most of our webinars, I think the recording is also listed there. So in case you don't want to go directly to YouTube, I think most webinar recordings are also posted directly on our website under past events. So you can also check that out there. So if you want to stick around for questions, by all means, and if you've got to get going to your next event or meeting or whatever your next commitment is today, I thank you so much for attending. Normally I would advertise what next month's webinar is, but I am trying to, I have the date. The date picked, but I don't have a catchy title yet. But it will be more of a focus on our manufacturing and industrial. So we're going to switch it up from the office and kind of wait and see how office work develops, and then probably revisit office ergonomics again in September. But we'll switch it up and talk more about the needs for some of the industrial environments for August. So we have that set. Okay,